In Birmingham, there are many young unsigned talents that are yet to be heard who are walking the streets. In this day and age, it's becoming increasingly hard for youngsters to get their voices heard, many of these young males trying to make it big in the music industry. This documentary aims to highlight how young musicians and artists go about trying to get recognised. There is a short supply of successful musicians who originate from Birmingham, but the few artists that are successful make up for it with their talents. Black Sabbath can be seen as the most well-known influential band to come from Birmingham, as well as bands such as UB40, and recently more talents are originating from the underground music scene, such as bands like Peace and Truemaker. This is Making It. Today we've come to Birmingham German Market to find out what people think of young people in the music industry, what people think of showcases the X Factor. Rubbish. What do you think? Do you think it gives people a platform to showcase their talent?
Yeah-ish, but it's a bit contrived.
I think it gives young people a really good opportunity to make it in the music industry.
Never watch it.
Never watch it.
Rubbish.
What do you think about how it presents young people, like trying to make it?
For youth people, it's okay. It's all fixed, isn't it? I never watch it. It's only what I read.
I think it's manufactured.
Absolutely.
And do you think it gives people a good opportunity to try and get heard?
Yeah, I suppose.
I recently met with 18-year-old student David from Sheldon, who is in the unsigned band Comparnus, who have recently begun their musical journey by appearing on local radio. So, how do you think artists getting noticed has changed with the years?
Well, I think there's been significant changes in the way that bands get noticed and in the way that music is actually distributed in many ways. You know, I mean, years ago, bands would, record the music, and take it into a record store and get them to distribute it and try and, get something with it, maybe a record deal. Whereas nowadays, it's more bands, a lot of them getting noticed on, social networking sites like Facebook or a few years ago, MySpace, things like that. I mean, I think definitely it's changed drastically. I mean, especially with the way that the illegal downloading situations come in, and a lot of record companies, are not making the money that they were. They're losing money from illegal downloading, and bands a lot of bands have released albums that sort of off the cuff, not through the record labels, and that's sort of half showing that bands sort of don't necessarily need to get recognised to get big. You look at bands like Arctic Monkeys, who were really, really big on the internet before they were even signed, and that they had a massive following before they were even signed. I think that getting noticed is, of course it's important. Getting noticed by an audience is important, but by a record label as well now, bands are sort of showing that that's not necessarily the major force in being, noticed by a certain audience, or, the sort of people you're trying to get to listen to your music. And like I said, the changes have been drastic, and the way that music is now out there, it's just everything's different. Music can be accessed in so many different ways now that it's just sort of very easy to get people to listen to your music. Whereas a while ago, we're talking like 80s or whatever, a good few years ago, whereas it wasn't really like that. You had to sort of make more of an effort to be noticed, to be listened to by people.
What do you think of shows such as the X Factor for artists like yourself?
I think in many ways, obviously the X Factor's good. People people who necessarily people who look older. Obviously, they go on there, chasing the dream, or people who sort of even obviously you've got young people who go on there and they really. People who really think they can do something. They've got a good voice. It's not necessarily my sort of thing. It's very manufactured, it's sort of the mainstream pop music scene, isn't it? But at the same time, I can appreciate that a lot of people are into that sort of music, and it does give people hope. A lot of people, I'm pretty sure everyone knows someone who's turned around and said, "I'm going to go on the X Factor." It's a massive force.
Do you have any plans to get noticed, or is there any way that you're thinking about going about it?
Well, we've just been writing in the studio and things like that. We just played a couple of gigs recently. It's just sort of the beginning. We're just sort of starting out.